Welcome to Module 12. This is your final module before your final. So, way to go, you made it. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 26, and we're going to be doing pants. There's a lot of this chapter that you'll probably be able to figure out on your own. What I want to do is a really straightforward way of developing the pant block so that you can use it for everything else that you do. I'm going to do it at half size like normal. If you want to do it at full size, just some thoughts to take into consideration. Men, it might sound funny, but you want to make one of these skirt slopers for yourself. Because I'm going to use this as the base for the creation of the skirt, of the pant block. In the book, she steps through a whole bunch of different methods to do like the trouser fit and the jean fit and the culotte fit. Like she does a whole bunch of different things and she sort of drafts all of them from scratch. But then you're setting yourself up for more fitting. When I think that we can maybe potentially skip one fitting by using blocks that we already have. Especially, ladies, for those of you who have fitted your skirt for yourself, you've already got the block for you in this form for the skirts, and then we're going to use this to develop the pant. So, a couple things before I bring you down and I show you what we're going to do. If you go to chapter 26, we're going to go to page 565 first. Not 565, 566. Oh, 565 is nice. They have lots of people all lined up wearing pants. How fun. Great. So 566, they have some pant terminology for you to look at. Don't worry about bifurcated. Crotch, that's the base of the torso where the legs join the body. That's what the crotch is. You probably already knew that, but if you were in doubt, there it is in the book telling you that you were right. Crotch depth, that's another thing that you need to know, and that's basically the distance from the waist down to the base of the crotch. It's not distance like starting at center front going through to the back, it's just that vertical dimension between the waist and the crotch. The rise is another way for saying crotch depth. It's just referring to that, how deep that is. Crotch length is referring to center front waist, basically taking a ruler from center front waist, going down between the legs, coming back on the other side, and up to the waist at center back. That measurement is your crotch length. And you do ultimately want to have that. The other things that you need to know about are, crotch point just means that where it gets, you can see that on the picture on figure on page 566 where they have crotch extension. I don't want to say something and have it go turn into a bad joke. And then the crotch level is basically that level of the crotch depth drawn out on. It's kind of like the hip level. We draw that line. It's like the bust level. We draw that middle line. All of those horizontal measurements, the crotch level is just another one of those planes as you go down the body. Outseam refers to your side seam. Inseam refers to the seam that goes from the crotch down the inside of your leg down to the hem. That is your inseam. So those are some good key words to know. The other thing that I want you to go to is page 568. On page 567, they show you like the different things that she's going to show you how to draft in this book. So she starts with the culotte and then the trouser and the slack and the jean. They all vary a little bit different with their crotch extension. If you go back up to 566, the crotch extension is, if you look on the crotch level, crotch extension is going from that center back or center front line, that extra piece of fabric that's chalked on to go between the legs. That is the crotch extension. So with her different figures and her different pant foundations, she uses a different crotch extension for all of them. Personally, I don't like to do that. I kind of like to start on one, and then depending on what style I'm going to do, I like to change the fit of my block accordingly. So if you want to have your culotte and your trouser and your slack and your jean block, great. I would still probably approach them the same way that I'm about to show you. The one change is what extension you're planning on using. So on page 568, there's a formula for crotch extension. I will be using the jean extension. So I'm going to be doing, if you look underneath jean, it says back 1/4 of back hip for contour fit. I'm going to be doing that contour fit. On the front, I'm going to do that 2 inches. She kind of throws a number at it right there, but it's a good number to start with. So go ahead with it. It should be fine. But she does mention that if, like, I will be using a size 8, any sizes that are underneath 10, I will need to subtract 1/8 of an inch from 2. So I'll actually be using 1 7/8 of an inch. And then if you're going over size 18, not 18, over size 14, you add 1/8 of an inch for each size over 14. Crotch level, if you look down there, what that's referring to is when you take a measurement for your crotch depth, that's measuring the body, but we don't necessarily want the fabric to be right at that same level or you'll get a wedgie. So instead of going with the level that we have, so whatever your crotch depth is going to be once you find it, you're going to come to this and say, how much extra fabric do I want? How much extra drop should I have to add on to that so that it doesn't give people a wedgie? So I'm going to be adding 1 inch to mine. If you look at the jean spot, it says 1 to 1.5 inches for contour fit. I'll be using 1 inch because then it just gets really close to the body, but it's not going to give a wedgie. So whatever the crotch depth I have is, I'm going to add 1 inch to it. Basically, it's a form of ease. So the last thing that I want you to look at is on page 570. They give you a couple measurements spots to help figure some stuff out. They also do a whole bunch of math there that I don't really want you to look at. The one thing that I want you to pull in is on chapter 26, page 570. Look at figure 3 and figure 4. Those give you 2 different methods for getting your crotch depth if you're going to measure yourself for it. So one of them is sit on a chair, measure from your waist down to the level of the chair. You don't want one of those chairs that's slanting. You need a chair that's like perfectly flat so that you can get a good measurement from your waist down to your seat. So that's one way to get the crotch depth. The other is figure 4, where you take one of those squares and you just basically stick it between your legs and bring it up, and you make sure that the horizontal line is truly horizontal. Measure up from, and you can measure the crotch depth that way as well. And the other thing that you want to pull in is figure 5, which is the foot entry. We want to build this block as though we're going to be using like a muslin. We're not building this block for a knit, which means that it's not going to stretch. So since it won't stretch, we have to make sure that whatever, that the foot can get through the hem. So the narrowest that this pant can get and this block can get is your foot entry right there. So I'm going to start on the men's measurements and then we'll go back to the women's measurements. So for the men's measurements on page 497 and through 498, if you were doing this for a man, first you would have had to kind of create this first top section, which wouldn't be that hard. But the other pieces of information that you want to have is measurement number 15, measurement number 17, or actually measure your foot. You'll also want 18 and 19, that's waist to ankle and waist to knee. And then you want measurement number 22 and number 3. For the women's measurements, on page 36, you need to have measurement number 27, the waist to knee and the waist to ankle. Don't worry about the waist to floor. You'll also need measurement number 24, which is the crotch depth. You'll also need measurement number 28, crotch length. You'll also need measurement 30 and 32, specifically the foot entry of 32. That will give you all of the information to be able to draft the rest of the trouser, beginning with your skirt foundation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you down, and I'll develop the pant. I'm using the ones with 2 darts, and that's kind of important. You kind of want the one with 2 darts on the front and 2 darts on the back. So I'm going to bring you down, and we'll start that. All right, I am going to start with the front. So I have my skirt front block here, and I am just going to trace it out. I'm going to make sure that center front, so this is center front, has a whole bunch of extra paper, because this is where the crotch extension goes. So the hip and all of the, like this outside side seam and the waist and all of that, this is all going to stay basically the same shape right here. All of this in here is going to change, because at center front, suddenly we need something that curves off and goes between the 2 legs. So I am going to trace my skirt front block, but I'm not going to trace the whole thing. I'm only going to trace from the level of the hip all the way around, pulling in all of the darts. To the other level of the hip. So this is all that I have done thus far. I like to start with this because we already know that it fits. So I like to develop using stuff that I already know works rather than shooting into the dark. So here's my center front. Here's my hip. So now all I need to know is how far down from the waist, so here's my waist up here at center front, I'm measuring down from center front, how far down from center front, along center front, is my hip depth? I have not my hip depth, my crotch depth. So here's the hip depth, and the crotch depth is always longer. So for me, I've got my crotch depth, and I'm going to extend down this line until I get to the crotch depth. Which for me is right here. I actually shouldn't have extended the hip line any farther forward. I need to extend further forward. Just need to have it. What I need to extend all the way out that direction is a line that is the crotch level. So once I've gotten the crotch depth coming down from the center front waist, I've come down along this line, found the crotch depth. I'm going to take that line and I'm going to square it out both directions. And now coming off of center front, off into this open space, I'm going to insert my crotch extension. And my crotch extension, when I looked at that, is 1/4 of my hip, which is just a fancy way of saying half this dimension right here. So whatever this dimension is on your hip, just measure from the side seam to your center front. Take that measurement, divide it in 2, and that is your crotch. No, wait, no. So we're now going to be doing the crotch extension off into this open space. So we're now going to be doing the crotch extension out into this open space. And to get that, if you look at the book, on the front they said that it is, for sizes less than 10, it's 2 inches minus 1/8 per size. So if it was a 6, I'd be subtracting off 1/4 of an inch. I'm doing an 8, so I'm going to be doing only 1/8 of an inch less. So mine is 1 inch and 1/8. I mean, 1 inch and 7/8 is what my extension would be for a size 8. And I am at half size, so it's going to look a little bit less than that on my paper. And I've just got that marked there. This is what my extension is going to be. Now what I'm going to do is I want to start thinking about getting rid of some of these darts because I don't necessarily want darts on my pants. You could leave one of the darts if you want. And I will be leaving one of the darts on the back because the back has bigger curves than on the front. But I actually want to get rid of them all the way. And this first thing that I'm going to be doing, I would do regardless of whether I was trying to get rid of the darts or not. I would basically get this pattern down to just a single dart and I would have it placed at the halfway point. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut a line straight across from the side through center front and to but not through the point of this first dart. And then I'm going to also cut along the first leg of the dart that's closest to center front, to but not through the point. And I'm moving this dart. I'm going to close it just like that. Notice that I have just opened up this dart into center front, and that's totally okay. That's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to fill in that empty space with a little bit of paper. And this is going to start creating the angle that I want for my front crotch. So go ahead and take that curve. So this angle that's now been formed by closing the dart, I'm going to take that and I'm just going to start extending it. It shouldn't extend beyond this dart, if this point on the extension. If it does, then maybe don't close that dart. But as long as it's shy of it, so that you can form a curve, like that, you'll be good. The other thing that I actually want to do is get rid of this other dart because, so I'm gonna blend through here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this dart, the measurement here, which is, and take it off of the side seam. Now these darts are 3 inches long, or they should be, so I'm going to blend out this triangle off of the side seam. Just like that. pants tend to fit a little bit tighter through this section, so it's okay for us to do something like that. So I've gotten rid of both of the darts. One has increased the curve on the front. Change the curve on the front. If I'd wanted to, I could have left that dart and I could have just blended that front into the straight line. That would have worked as well. So depending on what you want from your block, you could have chosen to do that as well. But I like the way that this is working out. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to measure, extend that side seam down until it hits my crotch level. I'm going to find the halfway point. The halfway point from the side seam all the way through the extension. And I'm going to make a mark there. And that mark, I am going to square down all the way down the paper. Now what I have to do is figure out where my knee is and where my ankle is. So from the waist, I can take this all the way up to the waist so it makes it easier to measure it. So from the waist, I'm going to measure down to my knee. And I'm also going to measure down to my ankle. Let me figure that out since I'm doing it half size. I need to make sure I do the right math on making this the appropriate length. All right. So it's all the way down here. And at the ankle, I'm going to square over both directions. Just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to figure out what my foot entry was. Now, the foot entry is interesting because we have to cut it in half, but then we just have to make sure that the foot entry measurement for the back is an inch bigger than the foot entry measurement for the front. So, for example, my foot entry is 12.5 inches. I'm just going to round that up to 13 just to ensure that I have a nice, good way to get my foot through this ankle. If I divide it in half, that makes it 6.5 inches. And then if I want the front measurement to be an inch bigger than the, if I want the back measurement to be an inch bigger than the front measurement, I'm going to play with those numbers and I'm going to end up with 6 inches on the front and 7 inches on the back. So 6 and plus 7 is 13. They're an inch apart. And I'm going to take the small number for the front. So my small number would be 6 inches. So half of that measurement is going to go on one side of this line. Half that measurement is going to go on the other side. So I took the 12.5, figured out, basically I divided that number in half, and then took half that measurement and put it on, I finagled it so that the front measurement was exactly an inch smaller than the back measurement for the foot opening. And then I'm going to take half of that measurement and put it on one side of this new grain line that I've drawn, and half of it will go on the other. And now I'm going to go up to the knee and I'm going to square the knee across. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect that ankle line to the side seam. I'm going to make sure that it's blended nicely. And then I'm also going to connect this ankle to the front crotch. Ultimately, with the fitting, this will probably get scooped out a little bit and curve like this. But to get a good start, I'm just going to bring them all the way down. This will actually fit like a trouser in a lot of ways, just with a skinny ankle. That is the front. If you want to, you could bring this inseam in just a little bit. I could bring that in like a 1/2 inch. And then blend the crotch over. In fact, that wouldn't be a bad thing to do. So both are fine. This one will probably require more fitting. This one is another shot in the dark, but it'll get you closer. With this piece now, I can go back and I can say, here's my side seam. Let me make pocket bags. Let me make my center front fly guard and my fly guard and my fly front facing. All of those finishes show up right now. If I want this to be a pair of shorts, figure out what inseam you want for the shorts and cut it off at that level. The front is done. Now let's go ahead and do the back. So I'm going to use the back block this time. And I'm only tracing out down to the hip. Maybe a little bit longer. You don't need the hem of it. Draw your hip. Get your crotch depth. Square it over. We're basically just repeating what we did on the front. There's going to be a few little bit, there's going to be one difference, but as far as this area up here goes. I'm going to get my crotch extension, which my crotch extension for the back is not like the front, where the front was 2 inches plus or minus 1/8, depending on your size. The back, you measure from the side seam to center back, whatever that dimension is, divide it by 1/2, and that is the crotch extension. So in this case, at half size, for example, I'm at 4 5/8, well, 4 1/2. So my crotch extension would be 2 1/4. There's the crotch extension. You'll notice that the crotch extensions on the back are always bigger than the ones on the front. That is normal. Just like on the front, I'm going to slash over through center back to the first leg of the first dart, and I'm going to close that dart. Just like this. Fill it in. This dart is now gone. And I can extend this line down. And blend between my extension and that new line. Just like that. to take care of this dart, I'm just going to take it and I am going to move it this direction. So to get it to move that direction, first I want to establish my grain line. And my grain line will be established by finding the halfway point between the extension and the side seam. And I'm going to square up and square down. And I'm just going to keep on going down because I'm going to use this eventually. But coming back up here to the top, I am going to basically just move this dart. I'm using my grain line to figure out the level that that dart point needs to stay. And I'm going to pick up this dart and I'm just going to shift it over so that this point is halfway between the side seam and the back, center back. Just like that. I'm going to square up from that point. And on each side of it, I know that I have I'm going to take this dimension and divide it over my center point there so I can get rid of this old dart. Here is the new dart. I'll perfect that and smooth everything through the waist. If you hear the moaning in the back, that's my dog feeling happy about life. Blend through. Add my seam allowance. And I have a new dart. Just like that. Now I can go down and finish the rest of the leg. I need to know what my knee depth is and the ankle depth from the waist. So I'm measuring down from the waist, down to the knee. Giving myself the ankle measurement. Just do the horizontal line. It's just nice to have this horizontal line for where the knee is as a reference point. And then I'm going to take that measurement for the ankle that's an inch bigger than the measurement that we used on the front ankle. And use it back here. On the side seam, I'm just going to connect to the hip depth, to the crotch depth line so that it just smooths nicely through there. And grab my curve and make sure that it's extra curve smooth if I want. And then the other thing that I want to do is connect the back as well. And again, this is a good starting point. If you want to, at the knee, you can take it in a little bit by like half an inch. I wouldn't go more than half an inch. And then blend into the crotch. And you have the back. One thing that you do want to check, So I'm not going to put my seam allowance on here yet. So this curve is a lot more gentle on the back than it is on the front. Make sure that whatever curve you have on the back you have a similar curve on the front. It'll help it sew together more smoothly. So I just sort of willy-nilly eyeballed it. Actually make a conscious decision to have this curve and this curve. Even though they might be at sharper angles, the curves themselves are going to be the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut along here without adding seam allowance. I can always add seam allowance later, and especially if I'm going to use this for a block, I'm not going to have seam allowance on my block anyways. So I'm going to cut off this front crotch. I do want you guys to show me seam allowance on the ones that you turn in. Obviously the ones you're turning in will be styles. So I'm going to line them up where they're going to get sewn together, and I'm going to look at that just to make sure that I like the angle. You'll notice that the front comes down and it kind of is pretty sharp as it goes into the back. We don't want that. We would like it to be as smooth as possible as it transitions through that area. So go ahead, and since you will have dropped the crotch depth an extra inch, since you will have dropped this line an extra inch as you were creating it, for ease there, letting it smooth through this area is not going to be a problem. So just find the right angle on your curve to get it to blend nicely between the front and the back. So my new curve looks more like that. There's the final back point, extension point. Here's the final front extension point. I can go in and add seam allowance, all of it. With these two garments, with these two blocks, you can get going on pants. If I want to make it a boot cut, then I can slash this open here and expand it. Same thing here, I would expand it the same on both sides. If you want it to be extra baggy, you could expand it all the way up to here. If you want a short, here, if you want to put godets in it, you could put a godet in right here. You can go to town doing whatever you want style-wise. So they've got a couple design ideas in the book that you could go look at. But like I said on the front piece, this is when you could do the pockets. This is when you could do all of that. If you want a patch pocket, just make sure that you show where it's going to go really well on here. You've got a dart back here, which means if you don't want to keep it, so for more formal wear like suits and stuff like that, you could keep that dart and it'd be fine. Lots of pants have darts. Think back to ways of getting rid of darts. You could slash it to someplace else, or you could simply say, hey look, I want to make this into a true pair of jeans. There is a yoke. Cut it off, close the dart, and you're good to go. Remember, this pattern comes all the way up to the waist, so if you don't want a high-waisted pattern, think, do I want it to come down an inch? Do I want it to come down 2 inches? The minute you've dropped it 2 inches, you've almost gotten rid of a good chunk of the dart right by dropping the waist a little bit lower. So all sorts of thoughts that you can have dealing with pants. So have fun. Here's the block for pants. Using blocks that you've already created. If you want to draft one from scratch, there's one in the men's section. There's stuff in the women's section. So men's chapter 23, I think, so they've got a section on jeans. So you could totally do that if you want, or if you want to, don't draft it at all and rub a pair of pants off that you know that you like the crotch curves already, and then use that to develop another pattern. So that is it. This concludes all of the modules until the final. So go have fun on your final. Yeah, have a great day.